So now we have this house. You'll see here, this 2-story house. George Carey built this house in 1834. He lived in it for 10 years by himself, and it was a very small house. It was just 2 bedrooms, a little kitchen in the back, and then he got married after that 10 years there, and his wife said, we need to make this bigger. So when he married her, they went up with the house. So that's where the second story came along. The house went through some hands, and over the next 100 years, as it would, and then came Jessie Porter. Jessie Porter was a 5th-generation conch. She was raised, conchs are people who were born in Key West and raised, we call them conchs. So she was a 5th-generation conch. She had been here her whole life, and she was very a pioneer in creating and preserving the buildings in our historic district, which you're standing in today. While Jessie owned the house, a lot of big people, like big QS people at that time, came and stayed here. Gloria Swanson stayed here. Tennessee Williams stayed here. Ernest Hemingway and his wife, and Robert Frost stayed here. Robert Frost, actually, in the back there is the Robert Frost Cottage. Robert Frost, he stayed there in 1934. He came down for 16 winters. Robert Frost told people he didn't care too much for Key West, and it was run down. And it wasn't the 1930s. He wasn't blessed to have Hanks and all this gloriousness around him at the time. But let's just think about that. Would you spend 16 winters somewhere that you didn't like? Probably not. So I think we all know that Robert Frost loved Key West. He just didn't want the greatness of this to get out to everyone. We also, Key West was the home and the original place of the Pan Am World Airways. Pan Am had a contract they created with Key West to Havana, Cuba, for an international mail route. Huge deal. But Key West didn't have an airport. So they scrambled, got seaplanes together, found out that they could do an hour-and-a-half flight from Key West to Havana, Cuba, which would be much faster than doing it by boat, which would take hours. So up came Pan Am Airways. It was not at this location, which you see here. It was actually at the end of Duval on the waterfront, because it was the Water Airport Airways. I'll also show you an original cleat that is still left on the building from when it was the airport mail place. So Pan Am Airways. So Pan Am was there for a while. It started in 1927. They did it until they got so big they could no longer do it. So now the international headquarters are in Miami. This house was moved by our pioneer, which I spoke of earlier, Jessie. Jessie owned this property. Jessie moved the house from Duval and put it here and restored it so it can still be in our historic district and used today. It was owned by Kelly McGillis. She was in Top Gun. It was called Kelly's for a while. Kelly was a huge microbrewery into the brewing of beers. So it was that for a long time. And then it is First Flight, which is still a brewery. First Flight is actually, the owner of First Flight owns a couple other places in town. His sister restaurants are 915 and Bagatelle, which we will be going to here soon.